Okay, hello everybody. I think we're ready to go. Um, I think we have good representation here. The only person we're really missing is Dimitri, but if he comes in later, we can go to back to testing. Um, so let's go ahead and go to the agenda. Okay, so we'll skip testing for now, and then go into client updates. We will start with parity, and this is not necessarily Constantinople updates. We'll probably go through that separately. But if you want to go through that now, either way, I guess.
Yeah, thanks, Hudson. Actually, Constantinople is first on my list, so I just go through it because Parity client is ready implementing all EIPs. We merged everything. We have tests, at least. Let's talk tests later. So for now, we can basically switch the flip in Parity and start testing it. So that's what's new regarding Constantinople. What else? We have like some strategic discussions for parity. We consider replacing warp sync with some hybrid client mode instead. We are considering 2 or 3 stage clients. So imagine you start a parity Ethereum node and it will, instead of starting to sync from Genesis, it will pop up a light client. So you have something to work with when you start it immediately, and it will do a full sync in background. We also consider maybe not replacing warp sync with the hybrid client, but having like a 3 stage client that starts up as light client, does a warp sync in background, and then a full sync once the warp sync is done. But that's all just ideas. The background is that we need to think about alternatives because the state is so big that even warp sync takes like 2 hours now, and that's quite loses the point of being warpy at all, you know. And another problem we want to address with this is actually removing our ancient block synchronization, which is not a full verifying block synchronization, but just checking the proof of work. And I personally would like to see this replaced with a fully verifying synchronization mode. But that's just all ideas. We have no concrete plans to implement this yet. Main problem is that we need to stabilize the light client first. Yeah, what else is we have a light wallet. It's called Feather. It's a light Ethereum wallet to do basic stuff like Ether transactions or token transaction. It's an early alpha for everyone interested. I would say just check it out. And yeah, still we need to stabilize the light client. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Real quick question about the Feather wallet. I thought that I saw a blog post about 2 or 3 months ago saying that you guys were dropping the wallet in favor of only doing production-ready CLI clients for people like exchanges. Is this kind of a different path now, or is this separate?
Yeah, that's Feather's quite a small project. It's a very light Electron app that allows sending Ether and token, and that's it. It's like a very small utility you can put everywhere on your desktop, on a web, on a phone, whatever.
I see.
It's just sometimes you want to have a quick way to send tokens or Ether. That's what Tether about is.
Okay, cool. Thanks for the update. Um, And then let's see, what do we got next? Um, oh, Dimitri showed up. Dimitri, we're going to go through testing after we go through client updates. And let's go ahead and also talk about our Constantinople progress with the client update. It'll be better to just combine the two, I've decided. So next we'll go with Geth. I think that would be Martin.
I'm here, by the way,
Oh,
Vitalik.
hey, Vitalik, welcome.
Hi.
Thank you.
So yeah, Peter is up in Serbia, so I was hoping he would make it. I don't know really if we've had anything we need to mention here, except for we're lacking two things for Constantinople. It's the mining reward reduction and it's the net store changes. I'm hoping we'll get it in within the next couple of days. Yeah, other than that, it's ready, and as far as it can be configured to be in Constantinople mode and run the state test and stuff for Constantinople, so we can do testing on.
Okay, awesome. Next, we'll go with Trinity.
Well, I think we are in roughly the same boat as Geth. We've got to get we got 2 more issues for Constantinople, issuance reduction, and the changes to storage costs. I expect those will get spun up pretty soon. We're kind of in the middle of a larger internal refactor to speed up our sync processes, which I think we're looking at some notable improvements, but I don't really have numbers right now for how big those are getting. But chipping away at the performance numbers to get towards a client that syncs in a reasonable time. So I think that's what we got.
Okay, thanks so much. And sorry, did you give a Constantinople update too? You said you had a few more to go.
Yes, we've got 2 outstanding issues, issuance reduction, and I can't remember the number, but the changes to storage costs.
Okay, great. Thank you. Aleph?
Yeah, hi. So we also finished all the AP's implementation for Constantinople now. So Aleph is ready now for Dimitri to generate the tests for any AP. Yeah, we also fixed the issue reported by Martin last week about the case with address collision when the account is considered empty by the protocol. That is, it has 0 nodes and doesn't have the code, but still has non-empty storage, which is a very theoretical case, but we have some tests affected by it. So Aleph behaved a little incorrectly in that case, and we fixed that, and the tests were generated, so now it should be fine. Yeah. So that's it, I think.
Okay. Ethereum J?
We've been working on Constantinople, and we have S-Store gas price reduction so far. It's been merged, and we also have implemented Skinny Create 2, but there is one test failure, so working on that. It's not yet merged. And one thing that is left is difficulty bomb delay. I guess it's pretty straightforward, so I guess we will have it by the next week. And the next step is to work on testing to make sure that Ethereum J is hard fork compatible. I guess, yep, the next week or the next 2 weeks we'll be ready for the fork. That's it.
Okay. Thank you. Nimbus?
Hi. We enabled the general state tests in Nimbus, and we are now passing more than 500. But we noticed that several are assuming that gas is uint 256, even though Geth and PyVM are using int64. So we'll be looking for some feedback later. We also started working on some precompiles, and for cryptography, we are looking into more test vectors for the alt BN 128 curve, because it's kind of hard to find. Regarding P2P, we now have better block downloads and can request a range of blocks. And regarding research on ETH 2.0, we've implemented the fork choice rule, the old one, and we're looking into integrating it into the Beacon Chain 2.1.
Cool. That sounds good. Thank you. TurboGeth?
Hello, it's Alexei here. So yeah, I have I'm not working on Constantinople here, but there's one thing which I kind of, I think I've combined some of the earlier pull requests for the net gas metering into TurboGeth, and for the reason I'm going to explain now is that I've changed the database layout again to support pruning in a kind of trivial way. And I also, when I was testing RPC, I noticed that I've been writing some records in history with duplication. So this actually, the NetGas metering implementation helped me to figure out the duplicates. And when I remove the duplicates, I've seen another really big reduction in the storage space. So it's probably going to be about 100 gigabytes less for the archive node. So, and I also changed the records so that they are reverse diffs rather than forward diffs, which means that I can very easily implement pruning, which basically just throwing away the old history without any other changes. So, and also I was actually starting to look at the maybe supporting some kind of warp sync, and I'm going to be very interested talking to Parity guys about this. Maybe make it sort of compatible or something like that. And so yeah, so I fixed most of the RPC APIs, like the transaction tracing, storage introspection, balances, and generally I can see a very big performance difference. Like for example, the transaction tracing is about 10 times faster than in Geth, and the storage introspection is about 100 times faster. But some of the other things that I haven't measured yet. The interesting thing is that I also tried to remove the storage receipts, to not store them at all, to reclaim another maybe 40 gigabytes. And at the moment, it works on the same level of order of magnitude as the Geth running, kind of restoring the receipts from the storage. But I also noticed that a lot of time is actually spent on re-recovering the sender from the signature. So that is well, that was another interesting investigation that I did. Yeah, so very soon. So basically, TurboGeth is pretty much ready, but it needs to be a bit polishing. So, and we're going to be deploying it within Fura, maybe in a week or two, to start the first kind of real live testing. So that's my update.
Awesome. Thanks for the update. So next up, before I go into eWASM and research, are there any other clients that I missed? Is Ethereum JS here? Okay. Yeah. Are there any other clients I missed? Otherwise, we'll just continue on to eWASM, and that'll be, I guess, AXIC.
Yeah, hi. So we have a swappable VM which we're working on, and it is called Hera, and runs through the EVMC interface. That means it works with Aleph. But we have a fork of Go Ethereum to use it in Go Ethereum as well. And we made a significant progress in discussing that change with the Go Ethereum team, and hopefully it's going to be integrated into Go Ethereum soon, in a matter of weeks. Second to that, in this VM actually we support multiple engines for executing WASM itself. And so far we have 3 engines, 2 interpreters, and 1 JIT. And having this in place enables us to focus a bit more on benchmarking, and that is our next big focus, to benchmark precompiles. So basically all the mainnet precompiles implemented in WASM, benchmark those between these 3 engines. And the main result we expect to have is an understanding of the performance between a JIT and the non-JIT WASM engine. So that was most of the work we have done in the last 2 weeks.
Okay, cool. Let's do research next. So that would be Vitalik and then Danny.
Sure. Do you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
So on the research side, I think there's just been slow progress on kind of polishing and refining the Casper 2.1 spec. there's been and there's also been a lot of progress on kind of getting that implemented. There's been, and I know there's been considerable progress on the Plasma side, but that's kind of less directly related to core client development. So I guess all in all, it's been relatively quiet this week.
Okay. Danny, if you have any other further updates, that'd be cool. But also at the same time, can you kind of go into what the ETH Implementers 2.0 call is? Because I've been seeing that pop up, and I'm kind of curious what gets covered in there, and if people need to contribute or tune in.
Right. So I think we've done 4 ETH 2.0 implementers calls. We do them every 2 weeks. We're doing every other week off of the core dev calls, but then the core dev call had 2 in a row. So we have it on Thursdays. We had it yesterday. Any of the people on this call are certainly welcome to join. I know Afri came yesterday as kind of first representation for Parity. It's an effort to begin implementing the V2.1 spec, which is the beacon chain, which is going to be kind of a new component of the protocol developed in parallel to ETH 1.0 for the time being. It's definitely, the spec is, the bones of the spec are really solidifying, and we're kind of just doing minor refinements and additions at this point rather than kind of core rewrites. So if your team hasn't taken a look, it's probably a good time to at least familiarize yourself with the spec, at least what's going on with that, and make an informed decision on whether it's time for your team to maybe start looking at it. And if you want to hop on a call with me to discuss the architecture and kind of the design decisions or anything like that, I'm very happy to take that offline as well.
Okay. Thanks so much, Danny. And if you could, in the All Core Devs chat, yeah, exactly, post the spec to Casper. That'd be great. So the next thing, let's go back to testing. So what we're trying to accomplish today, hopefully, is to get a block number for Ropsten, or basically a rough time, like number of weeks or so, that we can actually fork Ropsten to start testing Constantinople, but that's going to be very dependent on testing. It was dependent on client implementations, but it sounds like by the end of next week, everyone's going to pretty much be done. So I think that when I say everyone, I mean the major clients, who, like Geth Parity and Harmony, should be done, and Aleph. So what we should probably do is, yeah, try to decide a block number, but let's get a testing update from Dimitri and Martin first. Dimitri, you can go ahead.
Yeah, hello guys. I posted earlier today a post which test cases we're still missing. It's about more coverage around store changes. It is about Xcode hash, which hasn't been updated by Jared for a long time, and I think I will handle those myself. And we don't have transition tests in the form of a blockchain test, and difficulty test for the bomb delay. It's not done in a blockchain test format, it's just formula check. And I heard about fast test being converted into state test. This is a really good idea. If we could do this, it would be really nice. What else? I finished creating create 2 tests. It's now in a repository and actually executed in Hive. We found a couple issues with Martin and discussed those. But actually, every client could now pass the current create 2 tests that we have. Also, if you have an idea, please add new test cases. This is still open. Although I haven't received any updates from you, but I hope maybe when you start implementing those, you will add some. What else? I'm ready to start to review all of the existing tests and regenerate them with a Constantinople version. This is a process I do before every hard fork release. all of the current tests are being regenerated by test it, the current Aleph version, and if needed, Constantinople version is added. And if there are some issues, I will be fixing those issues. So I not really know how much time it will take.
Okay.
I think this is all of the testing that we need for now.
Okay. And Martin, did you have anything? Because I know you've been dealing with Hive lately.
Yes. So as far as I know, I mean, Hive is running on Geth and Parity and LF. There are quite a lot of failures. I know, I think it's Emmerich on Parity side is looking into it, to their failures, and I'm looking into why Geth is failing a lot of Create 2 stuff. I was not sure if the tests were generated correctly, but as far as you know, Dmitry, they are now correct, right? All the tests in the test repo.
All the create 2 tests, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, we just have this issue about hypothetical scenario with the old create collision, and
yeah, there's just there are a lot of, I think there are 52 failures for Geth, which I don't think everything comes from that. So I'll have to dive in a bit more about that. Regarding fuzz testing, yes, so we have a large corpus of data from libfuster, which have been now converted into state tests, and we will try to execute those against clients that can do state tests. And I'll probably check them into a repo somewhere.
Martin, could I ask you a question at this point?
Sure.
Those state tests that are generated from corpus file, are those in a filler format or is just state test format?
They are in the ready to run format.
What format?
Well, they're ready to be executed on a client. They're not in generalized form.
Not in a filler format, right?
No.
Because if it's possible, please create a filler format.
Yeah, we can talk about this afterwards. Because I hash it out what exactly we mean. Other than that, we also have we don't have the libfuzzer running, but we have the EVM lab-based fuzzer running Get Parity. It is not switched over to Constantinople yet, but that's another to do. And I'm hoping to have the fuzzing properly running. Oh, let's say early next week.
Okay, awesome. So all things considered, I guess let me see here. So what we were trying to do is trying to launch Constantinople before DevCon. I don't know if that's still possible. I can see a timeline where that is possible, but I don't want to make it so that this is unsafe or that this pushes people too hard to get certain things done. So, as far as Dimitri, in your opinion, how much longer do you think, if you have a number at all? If you don't, that's okay. But do you have an estimate on amount of time testing should continue before we potentially fork onto Ropsten?
I think a couple of months at least. And we have upcoming DevCon conference, so that might delay the progress.
Okay, that sounds good. In that case,
Sorry, Dimitri, you said a couple of months. So was that a couple of months before we do the Ropsten fork?
Yeah, I would. I think it sounds a bit overly cautious because I mean Ropsten is a testnet, so I prefer we run it longer on Ropsten.
Yeah, I still have a lot of tests to implement in my list. That's why I put this date.
Okay.
Yep. But does anyone here really care if there's a consensus issue on Ropsten?
I don't really.
No,
I mean,
let's
I'm
break
not.
it.
I'm not judging. I'm just curious.
I'd argue that there's that consensus issues on Robson happening from time to time is good because it trains ecosystem participants in how to react to them.
Okay. So we could technically fork Ropsten before DevCon, but then not release Constantinople until after DevCon. That sounds like a good in between.
But what if some dApp developers are testing on Ropsten and then we just break all their workflow just before DevCon?
So I think if people are planning to demonstrate stuff for DevCon, I suspect they won't be using Ropsten, but either some private network or that they will be using Kovan or Rinkeby, because Ropsten has issues and I've had them for a long time. I may be wrong though. Please correct me if I am.
I find people use Ropsten less and less, personally, that I've seen.
Yeah. It's all about Rinkeby and Coven.
Okay. So, in that case, is anyone opposed to the idea of forking Ropsten before DevCon and then figuring out after DevCon when to launch Constantinople, hopefully before the end of the year?
I don't know if this is what you meant, Hudson, but I'm curious if we retired. What was it that came before Ropsten? Whatever it was, I can't remember
Morden.
the name. So like we retired Morden at some point, and Ropsten feels like it could be retired. I'm curious if we launched a new test network sometime soon and then did the fork on that one with the plan to just completely retire Rinkeby.
So,
Some benefits that I see from that are it being a younger network makes it easier for clients to reset, catch up, and run through the fork whenever we do actually have the fork scheduled.
is there a benefit in having a very mature blockchain as far as amount of blocks that have been produced when doing these test cases on something like Ropsten?
So I mean, there are pros and cons. I know that when Peter has experimented a lot with syncing protocols, and yeah, in those cases, Ropsten can. I mean, it has data, so it's possible to simulate how sync would appear on the network.
There's
But it's still
also
a big difference.
there's also there's also benefits to testing on a chain that has lots of stuff happening on it, because that just creates that one of them will accidentally find something.
Could you repeat that last part, Vitalik? You cut out.
I was just saying that there are benefits to testing on a chain that has lots of activity happening on it, because it's often the activity itself that just discovers.
Oh, we kind of lost you there again, but I think I heard what you said. Basically, there's benefits to having tests done on a chain that has a lot of activity on it, because more things could trigger a consensus issue.
Yeah.
Okay. This is interesting. Anybody else have opinions on this? So what's the major pro of starting fresh? Is it more to have it sync more quickly, or because I
So
think,
that's one pro, yes.
yeah, and Piper, you had given another pro. I just forgot it.
I mean, that was the primary one, was basically that Ropsten's been around for a long time, and we have retired a test network before. I've always kind of assumed that we would retire Ropsten at some point and kick off a new one. So it seemed like a prudent time for that. But Vitalik does have a point. Anyways, yeah, that was my intent, was something that was easier to pick up from the beginning and sync through where the fork is.
I think it's a kind of a balancing act, because if you say that if you have a users on your testnet and they're kind of happy, then they create a lot of activities, as Vitalik said. But if you make it too unstable, they will go away, and then you won't get that benefit. So you have to kind of keep the balance somehow. Not to do it too early, but again, so that it will definitely break, but not too late, so that you lose advantages.
And if we were to do a new testnet right now, all the clients would need to update to support that new testnet, and then everybody who wants to use it would have to update their clients. So that's not a bad thing, but that's just something where I don't anticipate that everyone's going to update their clients, so Ropsten would just live on for the time being, even though we're not really supporting it anymore, I should say. Um, so yeah, would there be, I guess there's issues with adoption is what I'm kind of seeing.
Well, if we're looking at multiple months before we think that we're ready for the testnet hard fork, according to testing, then rolling out a new testnet sometime in the next 2 to 3 weeks gives us an extra month and a half or more for that new network to kind of spin up and populate. And like you said, it doesn't eliminate Ropsten from the table. So it would mean that we could fork on our new test network and then potentially even fork on Ropsten if we felt like there was a benefit from doing it on a network that had more activity.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, how much work is involved in starting up a new testnet? I know, I think Casey did a lot of that last time, but I think he's real busy with eWASM. Um, and then something else. What else has to happen? I guess do we just set new parameters and then just go get miners to mine on it?
I may I leave a comment here. Do you really think having two proof of work testnets is beneficial for the ecosystem? Because maintaining one proof of work testnet is already like hard to incentivize miners to mine non-value bearing chain, and now we propose to have a second one. I don't know if this is something we really want to do.
Yeah, the idea isn't that we would support both of them. The idea is that we would tell the miners who are mining on Rinkeby, or sorry, on Ropsten to move to the new testnet would be the idea. We're just saying that as far as adoption goes, miners might not do that immediately, so Ropsten would live on.
I think we should test the hard fork on Ropsten. I see the benefits from having a new testnet, but it also has a benefits to have a chain that already has something in the state, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense. Any other comments?
I agree with Afri.
And I do not feel strong enough that we should have a new one to push for it. So I'm fine with that as well.
Okay, then we'll be forking Ropsten. Um, so what we can do is we can fork Ropsten, I guess, whenever we get it ready, even if the test cases aren't done. Um, I guess the only thing we'd be committing to if we were to, do that is we would have to. Oh, let me think. We would have to have people kind of on the ready if there is a consensus issue, which isn't a bad thing, I guess, because we want to practice that anyway, like Vitalik mentioned.
So to be a little bit more precise, are we talking about something like roughly 1 month or so from now, maybe a little bit more, forking Ropsten and kind of dealing with whatever fallout comes from that then?
Yes. Pretty much. I think that's pretty much what we'd be doing. So I think forking Ropsten sometime in early October would be fine, personally. But it's kind of up to you guys who are implementing this. I guess it's just flipping a switch in the client and then releasing a new client, right? Is there anything else that goes into it?
Maybe instead of us just needing to make a decision now, let's Afri, do you think you guys and Geth could get together and give us a date for this, or a proposed date for this, since really that we're talking about y'all's clients supporting the network?
I'm happy to decide on a block number now, but if other clients need more time, I'm happy to wait.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter. We could set a date now, I think.
Yeah, I think we could today. Um, So when is a good date? I guess it doesn't really matter as long as we give enough time to have a release ready. Looking at my calendar, people are going to be kind of busy with different stuff. There's like FSF, there's Web3 Summit, and then there's DevCon. So doing it like the second week of October, I don't think anything's going on the second week of October that I know of. So that might be a good range.
Can we target for something like that Tuesday, whatever the Tuesday is of that week?
That'd be the 9th.
I'd say it's hard to target a specific day. Right now, the average block time on Ropsten is 10 seconds or 9 seconds. I think it's a bit unstable.
So that would be good to target Tuesday then, because if it's a little early, then it's Monday. If it's a little late, then it's Wednesday. Or right? Or do you think the deviation would be much bigger, Afri?
Yeah, that's what I'm suggesting. It might be plus minus 7 days or something, depending on how fast miners hop on or drop off.
So can we, if we today just decide the day, aim for the 9th, and then at a later stage we set the actual block number when we need to release the new clients? How about that?
Seconded.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. So, I didn't catch the end of that, Martin. Which date would that be?
So today we only decide upon maybe aiming for the 9th of October, and in 2 weeks we set the block number when we're a bit closer to it.
Okay, that sounds good to me. Cool. So we kind of have a decision there. And then we'll also kind of be monitoring as we go along how close we are for test cases for Constantinople. Can someone do a calculation about block times in November and December?
For Ropsten or for mainnet?
Mainnet. Because we don't want to release Constantinople so late that the block times are crazy, but I think they're not going to get crazy till 2019. Is that accurate?
I believe so. I mean, our block times are like still around 15 seconds right now, because if so, they're definitely not going to get crazy within 2 months.
Let me check.
Yeah, I'll check myself. But like in general, right? You the general pattern is like a doubling. It start at the beginning. I think every 17 days, so 2.5 weeks. Hold on. Average block time chart. Oh, look at this.
Okay, I see it being about 15 seconds consistently.
Yeah, it's still stable.
Yeah, it seems like completely stable so far. So like we would probably have more than 3 months of safety, and likely even more. Like, if you notice what happened before Byzantium, right? Like the amount of time it took before it started even showing up on the charts, and the time it got to 30 is half a year. And right now, it's like not really even showing up on the charts. So, no. Although the one thing that we had then was kind of a backdrop of a rapidly increasing ETH price and hash rate, whereas now we don't. So this time could take, I don't know, like 4 to 5 months instead of 6. But like even still, it's like totally not urgent.
Okay. Hmm. Okay, that sounds good to me. So it sounds like we don't need to make any decisions on mainnet stuff today, and we're safe to say that if it doesn't happen until December even, then that would be okay. And right now it's September, so I mean it could happen as early as November, but as late as December and still be okay. That's great. So I think we can move on to other agenda items unless there's anything else here. And then I'm also seeing kind of in some emails and chats that people kind of want to join to champion some EIPs. And I don't really want to bring anyone else into chat today until the developers had more time to look at some of the last minute agenda items. For next time, we might go over them briefly today to kind of just go over what they are, but we wouldn't be making any decisions today for sure, and we wouldn't be having that in-depth discussion. So let's prepare a little bit more before we have people come in to champion certain EIPs. The
Cool.
next,
And I assume that those will be on the agenda for the next call.
yes, they would be on the agenda for the next call. They're on the agenda for this call to an extent. It's mostly people are willing to talk about ProgPow and 1108. But neither of those would go into Constantinople, so there's no rush on it. So let's see. Can we do it before DevCon? We're saying no. So that's the end of agenda item 4. So now that we have just a little bit of time, let's go ahead and run through 5, 6, and 7. But we're not going to go into much depth on them until we've had more time to look them over. So one of them is reduced gas cost on the call for to self. This was Axic talking about reducing the gas cost for the call instruction. So Alex, can you go over kind of what this EIP is and what you're recommending?
Yeah, actually, it was a collaboration between, maybe I'm pronouncing his name wrong, but Chuck from Viper and me. And it's been initiated by the fact that Viper currently uses call to sell for internal methods, but that currently is a bit more costly than just doing jumps, and therefore a lot of people suggested to Viper that it would switch over to jumps. And this has been created kind of as a counter action to that, because I think the way Viper does it currently is actually beneficial, because with jumps there's no, or at least regarding memory safety, it puts a lot of the work on the compiler. And with calls, there is no issue regarding memory safety. So the proposal is that for any kind of call, so not just call, but delegate call and static call, if it goes to the very same contract it originates from, then we charge less. Now, there's a lot of motivation described there, but the main question, at least from our side, is what would be a rational gas cost. So the proposal right now suggests just to go back to whatever it was before Spurious Dragon, which I think was 40, and keep 700 for any other case. But that assumes that the Spurious Dragon increase was really attributed to the IO cost. And what we're saving here is the IO cost, but we still, and the client still needs to create a new context, but the IO cost is saved. So that's in short.
Cool. Does anyone have any comments on that about it being a good idea or bad idea or anything in between?
Intuitively, it definitely seems a kind of more fine idea than it was before, especially because the spurious dragon kind of de facto reduced to the maximum stack depth from 1024 to like around 300 or so. And I personally would just incidentally favor Viper not switching to jumps regardless of whether or not this gets implemented, because like I feel there's value in having a language which kind of values simplicity even at the cost of optimality in some cases. But like in general, like it does seem to me like having like the whole idea that you have languages that needs where kind of calling yourself and calling like where basically you would need to kind of code up two ways of calling contracts, one for yourself and one for others, definitely seems kind of fairly suboptimal, and this does seem like a fine approach for kind of mitigating it.
It also feels somewhat in line with the current EAP for changing storage costs and sort of addressing the nuances of the actual costs.
By the way, was there an EAP for reducing the gas cost of call specifically during the precompiles? Is that part of Constantinople or not? Because I know we talked about it.
There are two separate EIPs for that, but I don't think it has been on an agenda for like the last 3 or 4 calls.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think
Because for simplicity, it might make sense to just like merge those two and have them at the same time, because I feel like their benefits are like not the same, but still in a similar category.
So actually, there is another proposal yet to be written up, which resulted from this proposal. We had a discussion within the Solidity team, and it was suggested by Chris that eventually we could propose a way similar to the net store metering, that there would be a map of loaded contracts originating from a single contract, and there wouldn't be an extra charge for loading an already loaded contract. The context this would be beneficial is doing a lot of library calls to the same library. And by library, I mean a Solidity library, which is a contract to be called with delegate call. But this proposal is yet to be written and yet to be designed. I just wanted to put it onto the table because it's kind of like the same direction.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I can see a lot of value in genericizing it because it addresses a wider thing, which is right, like our, libraries. The concept of Solidity libraries are pretty nice for certain things, but yeah, they do incur higher gas costs. So allowing that pattern to be.
I feel like this could be genericized even further, going all the way to saying something like the gas cost for accessing an account that has already been accessed in the same block goes down from like 700 to 40. Like that's more of a long-term potential thing.
okay. So we're not putting any more EIPs into Constantinople. So it sounds like these changes would have to go into the next fork afterwards called Istanbul. Um, so I guess, yeah. So when we're talking about it right now, it's more, I guess, talking about much in the future, implementing this kind of stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
Which is disappointing, but we, have to do kind of a freeze on EIPs eventually, so we're not stressing out Dimitri and others too much for implementing test cases and other stuff. So the next item, or were there any other comments on that?
So yeah, I was curious. Did you ever consider having a new opcode called like self call instead, and why? How come you choose to go with this instead?
Was that
This
for
would make
Alex?
existing contracts be able to use VFX rather than just future contracts.
Okay.
Martin, who was that question for?
It was for Axic, but I guess it got answered by Danny. It's fine.
Okay, sounds good. Any other comments? Okay.
Just to comment, I think it is healthy to like have at this point in this process, have new EIPs that might go into the future fork just starting to be discussed, so that we even have a little bit of momentum and can really get excited about a fork in 8 months. So I'm it's disappointing that we have cool EIPs that we can't include right now, but I think it's a positive thing to be considering that at this point.
Yeah, that's a good point. The next one is EIP 1108, reduce alt BN 128 precompile gas cost. So that would actually, I believe Martin responded to this in a thread I saw. But basically, this would, because the Go reference implementation had significant performance gains for ECAD and ECMOL and pairing check precompiled contracts, on that elliptic curve, that should be reflected in reduced gas prices. But I think there was like some issue where those performance gains were not for other clients.
Yeah, so what they wrote to me was that we strongly feel that continuing to keep gas prices high for these operations is going to jeopardize a whole host of privacy-related solutions from being able to get going on Ethereum. So there are a lot of people who want these precompiles to have lower gas costs. And as it is right now, we could lower it a bit. But we didn't. I think we kind of dropped the ball on that. We might have been able to make a small reduction for Constantinople, but I think that we can do a larger reduction in the next hard fork with some more work on the other clients. Well, on parity, and if it's possible to find a good Rust lib with which has all the optimizations and stuff. It would be nice.
Okay, that sounds good. Any other comments on that? Okay, and the last thing on the agenda is EIP 1057 and EIP 1355. 1057 is ProgPal and 1355 is ET-1A. There's some comments in the agenda that kind of argue that we need to implement ET-1A, which is just a slight tweak to ET-hash, in order to take more time to evaluate ProgPal. Just to give you an update, me and Powell have been looking at ProgPal, and we are getting some feedback on that from different engineers from different companies, and seeing the viability of it to see if it really does make ASICs obsolete. And this is not because we've decided to actually implement ProgPal at all. This is just to make sure we have all the information we need if we decide to do that. And this was kind of part of the, I guess, part of the package deal, in my opinion, with lowering the issuance, because miners cared more about taking ASICs off the network. So for us to consider that, and then to have the issuance reduction, I think was a good combination. So the biggest, the number one thing I can see with this, whether or not to implement something that makes ASICs obsolete on the network, the biggest thing I think would be, is there actually a threat to the network having ASICs on there? I know it does affect GPU miners, and do we, even care about that? So can I hear any opinions, if anyone has it, on what, because we had the miners on a few meetings ago, but we didn't really go into much detail about whether or not it's an actual threat to the security of the network to have ASICs on there, or if there's centralization risk and that stuff. So anyone who has an opinion, that'd be great. Okay. So it sounds like we're not getting any opinions really on whether or not it's a centralization risk or anything like that. This is kind of a contentious issue, more or less, because miners, are pretty passionate about this, but I haven't seen many other stakeholders really care. Such as just average users, DApp users, developers, other people like that. So we might just have to continue this conversation. Just to make it clear, ProgPow or any other change to the proof of work algorithm would not take place until after Constantinople, so likely 8 months from then, and then it's arguable if that would even have a major effect on the centralization of the network until then. I know people have said other opinions in the past about how it's not a centralization risk, but I think that's still up in the air to be discussed. Um, Given what I just said, does anyone have any comment?
I think ASICs, the discussion of ASICs, if we were not intending to move to proof of stake, I think could probably be argued as a centralization risk if it went the way of Bitmain with Bitcoin and other kind of networks. But this conversation is always in the context of moving to proof of stake, and I'm hoping by the time we're discussing the next work, we have some exciting developments on the side of the beacon chain and proof of stake, and that can maybe put the conversation in context, a little more in context.
Okay, that sounds good. So it sounds like there's no reason to commit to anything, especially today, but until after Constantinople, and even then, this will be in the context of how fast proof of stake can get there, because if it's going to happen shortly after Istanbul, or not even shortly, but just in enough time where we would only be obsoleting the ASICs for a few months or half a year or something, then that would definitely be a different story.
Right.
Cool. Any other comments on that? Oh, also, we coined a new term while me and Lane and a few other people were at ETH Berlin during a governance panel. There's something called consensus by Hudson now, where when no one gives a comment, I start rattling off, and basically, I hopefully don't steer the network in the wrong direction, but I just start giving my opinion. So I feel like that's what just happened, and I find that hilarious. So.
Hudson, you did a great
Enjoy your
job.
benevolent.
Thanks, Vitalik. I guess I'll take that from you now. What'd you say, Lane?
Oh, I said, Hudson, you did a great job of steering us towards a good dinner in Berlin using consensus by Hudson. So I'm all for it.
Great. All right. Anyways, that's the last item on the agenda. Does anyone have anything else to discuss? Cool. I'm looking forward to these meetings being shorter and shorter as we go on, and we're just doing mostly client updates and some EIP discussions, so we don't have to go an hour and a half each time. So this time we only went an hour, which I'm excited about, and we will see you all in 2 weeks for the next meeting. Bye, everybody.
Bye bye.
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 Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.